Also happening right now, some of the biggest names in the financial world are on Capitol Hill. The CEOs of America's largest banks will try and convince Washington and the world that the banking sector is back on steady ground following a banking crisis earlier this year. They will be making their case against new Federal Reserve regulations that are set to go into effect next year. Correspondent Tom Dempsey live on Capitol Hill with the very latest on this. Tom, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Marni. Yeah, at this hour, the heads for America's 8 largest banks are continuing to testify during the Senate Banking Committee hearing here on Capitol Hill. A very big focus of this hearing remains, like you said, on those federal banking regulations being proposed by the Federal Reserve in the wake of the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. To make things very easy for our viewers to understand at home, basically what these regulations would do is increase the amount of capital that banks need to have on reserve in cases of bad times, if you will. Supporters of this, like some Democrats on the panel, believe that these new regulations could help banks withstand losses during those bad times and not pass on costs to taxpayers. But opponents, like some Republicans on the panel, as well as the leaders of the big banks, believe that these new regulations could end up impacting things like mortgage rates and small business loans. Take a listen from both sides to what we've heard during this hearing.
Capital is just a way to fund loans and investments and risky activities in a way that can absorb losses if things go south. It means shareholders and investors are on the hook, not taxpayers.
It is simply requiring more capital on the sidelines, which then means fewer dollars to lend to small businesses, first-time home buyers, car loans. So the actual impact of a higher regulatory standard is fewer dollars to lend to Americans.
And both sides sort of breaking down what those regulations could mean. The Senate hearing today, though, is part of an annual oversight of the financing sector. But back in the spring, NewsNation extensively covered the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, which became the second and third largest bank collapses in U.S. history. The banks were very popular with tech startups and in the crypto industry. But during a downturn that lasted months, both banks saw customers needing more cash, which ultimately led to big bank runs and the two banks collapsing. Again, that crisis led to some lawmakers urgently calling for more regulations. So again, expect those regulations to be a very big part of today's hearing. And those new requirements proposed by the Federal Reserve this summer, basically increasing the amount of capital banks must have in reserve in case they fall on bad times. Other big topics we're expecting to come up during today's hearing include possible changes to late fees on credit cards, as well as worker pay and pay for executives at these big banks. Marni.
All important topics on the table. Tom, thank you for that. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.